Greetings and thank you for tuning in to this lecture online. When we last met, we were discussing the role that civil rights played within sports, primarily in the 50s, but also in the 1960s. And we were introduced to individuals like Ernie Davis, Arthur Ashe, Roberto Clemente, individuals that had broke color barriers, so to speak, and had also put the issue of civil rights and racial inequality in front of people's faces as they discussed various sporting events of the day. We were also talking about a sociologist from Cornell University, a guy by the name of Harry Edwards, that wrote this really important book, The Revolt of the Black Athlete. In general, we were talking about themes, black power, so to speak, with respect to the last time we met. Today what I want to talk about is an individual, and as you may have noticed on your syllabus, the topic for today is Muhammad Ali. In 1999, at the end of the 20th century, Sports Illustrated, many of you may remember this, Sports Illustrated put out its 100 most influential athletes, and Muhammad Ali was at the top of that list, and I believe ESPN had a similar list, and Ali topped it too. Now, you have to understand that by 1999, America had a very whitewashed understanding of Muhammad Ali. I don't necessarily intend on making a racial pun there, although it is certainly true that Ali had become much, much more acceptable to white America. What I mean is, we forget the association of Muhammad Ali and radicalism, Muhammad Ali and the demonstrations that were taking place in the 1960s. In short, there wasn't another athlete at that time, arguably ever, that was as polarizing as an individual as Ali was in the 1960s. Why? Well, in the 1960s, he was considered anti-American, un-American. We've talked about the culture of conformity, the idea that everybody was aspiring to the white picket fence in the suburbs throughout the 1950s. And we're also talking about a time period where the expectation was that you would live up to a specific type of political, social, economic orientation. All this is coming to pass at a time period where Muhammad Ali, at that particular moment Cassius Clay, was flaunting untraditional religions, refused to serve in the armed service, and symbolized the liberation movement that was erupting all across the developing world. He was constantly harassed by the government, the media. He was threatened with prison time. There was a brief window when he was banned from boxing. So to become this cultural icon that we see Muhammad Ali as today, he needed to be remade. And by and large, that's what the 20th century, the later part of the 20th century, did for Ali's legacy. Generally speaking, the world forgot his radical elements, and we tended to pick and choose what we remembered about Muhammad Ali. So by the late 1990s, Ali was ripe to become a cultural icon. But throughout the 1960s and 70s, Ali represented tough choices for America. And no other figure in American mass culture was so connected to these political events that we're going to talk about. All right, so let me go through the timeline here. There's a great film that you should see if you have a chance. Will Smith starred in the movie Ali, and one of the opening scenes of that film is a young Muhammad Ali on a bus in Louisville, Kentucky, and he's looking at the lynched image of Emmett Till. You remember us talking about Emmett Till. And so from a very early age, Ali was very keenly aware of racial violence in the United States. Over the course of time, similar to people like Joe Louis, he funneled his talents into sporting endeavors. February 26, 1964, there was a new champion born. Huge, huge upset. Cassius Clay defeated Sonny Liston. Really big upset. Now, in the aftermath of this, Clay forewent the usual luxuries, the parties. Instead, he focused his attention on going into the ghetto and conversing with individuals like the singer and Muslim Sam Cooke, the star running back for the Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown, and of course the black radical Malcolm X. Now there were wild rumors going into that fight that Clay, who would later become known as Muhammad Ali, was involved in one of the more radical institutions in American life at that time, the Nation of Islam. Now, from the very early point in his career, basically since the moment that he captured the heavyweight championship, the Boxing Commission, the Boxing Association, lectured him saying that you should not use the heavyweight championship for religious diatribes. There was moves to try to strip him from the belt, but there's no smoking gun that they can hang Ali or Cassius Clay from at this particular moment. Really what you're talking about, and I'll go into this in a second, Ali joining the Nation of Islam, to him and to people like him that felt like him, this was embracing his race. It was similar to what Jackie Robinson was doing, but it was doing so in a much different way, and a way that was much less acceptable to white America. What you see emerge is an us versus them mentality. Okay? The long shadow of the black athlete is really important to our class. I mean, you saw how important it was with respect to Jack Johnson and his connections to Joe Louis getting a title shot. Well, the people like Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown, all those individuals that were politically conscious and sports superstars at the same time, they're living under the shadow of people like Joe Louis and Jackie Robinson. And the emphasis during that period, the 40s and the 50s, was to turn the other cheek. Now, it's a different time and a different mentality, but Ali would come to symbolize this different struggle, struggle for cultural identity, cultural ownership, and eventually international imperialism versus the liberation movement that's sweeping across the third world. But to illuminate what I mean by this us versus them mentality, I want you to stop for a second and consider something. Liston, Sonny Liston, the former heavyweight champion, was a hoodlum. He was a petty criminal. He was not a good guy at all. Ali, for whatever you thought about him, his religion, his political orientation, was an upstanding citizen. But even so, the favorite going into the rematch, meaning America's boxer, was Sonny Liston. Even the NAACP, through its support behind Liston, and there were very clear anti-Islamic undertones through some of this messaging. Now, we think that Clay considered himself a member of the Nation of Islam as early as 1962. I mean, he never makes this public because to do so would to be jeopardizing a title shot. But in 1962, the Nation was the largest, the richest, and the most disciplined, longest-lived nationalist formation in the country. Even from its earliest origins in Detroit in the 1930s, it was the leading spokes institution for black separatism. Now, what was distinctive about the Nation was that it demonized white America. It demonized the institution of racism. Its leading voice was Malcolm X. We've talked a little bit about Malcolm X, but what I want to do now is elaborate a little bit on that. If you've ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know that he does not pull too many punches when it comes to white racism. And you also know that that brand of civil rights activism came across as far more militant, far more aggressive, and far scarier to the political establishment than that of Martin Luther King or other people in the civil rights, the mainstream civil rights movement. But as far as people like Clay was concerned, embracing Islam, and consequently the Nation of Islam, was embracing African consciousness. It represented freedom, it represented justice, equality illustrated by the crescent on the flag. 1961 the Nation of Islam was considered an anti-American, un-American institution by states such as California. Now, in the wake of his heavyweight championship, the leader of the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, bestowed upon Cassius Clay one of the greatest honors that could be bestowed upon him in the Muslim faith, a Muslim name, and that's where he became Muhammad Ali. He went from being known as Cassius Clay to adopting the name Muhammad Ali. Well, because he was such a high-profile individual in American life, this only furthered the us versus them mentality. Now, Ali's political consciousness, his coming of age, so to speak, is coinciding with a rising tide of this pan-Atlantic black consciousness. You're seeing more and more individuals, in the United States too, wearing African dress, eating African food, practicing African culture. If you're familiar with this particular period, the late 60s and early 70s, it's not uncommon to see individuals involved in the civil rights movement wear a dashiki, wear their hair in afros. This was seen as part of the political and social consciousness of the time. And we see this most directly with Ali. After winning the heavyweight championship and adopting the name Muhammad Ali, Ali went to Africa, Ghana in particular. This is also the same time that Malcolm X had gone to Africa on this pilgrimage to Mecca. Now, in Africa, what Ali sees is the wreckage, just the destruction levied upon the developing world by European and Western colonialism. But as far as Africa was concerned, Ali was a great symbol of pride and hope to the individuals that were trying to throw off the yoke of colonization and strive for their own independence. Now, in February 1965, Malcolm X was gunned down while he was giving a talk in Harlem, New York. I'm not going to get into the assassination of Malcolm X because it's not that important for our purposes in this class. What I will say is the assassination of X did lead to the radicalization of the civil rights movement. And when you saw people like Stokely Carmichael, people like the Black Panthers chanting Black Power and espousing some of the more radical quotations and understandings, thoughts rather, of Malcolm X, it terrified the establishment, the liberal establishment. I'm not talking about the racist establishment. Now, a few months later, Ali defended his title against Sonny Liston. And again, if you watch the film, it'll do a good job of talking about how all of this is erupting all around you. And, oh, by the way, Sonny Liston is also here. Well, one of the most iconic shots in all of sports history is Ali standing over a fallen Liston. A few seconds minutes probably, into the first round, Sonny Liston was KO'd, and you've got that image that all stands out in our minds of Ali standing over him, right, glaring at him. But what Ali is going to do in the aftermath of his successful defense of the championship is go on, and I'm not going to call them cupcakes, but he's defending his title against people that are simply not in his league. Floyd Patterson, for instance, was just purely outmatched. But what Patterson had said, he was an Irish-American fighter. What Patterson had said was that it was his duty as a Catholic to take the belt back for the Americans. Okay? Now, all the while that Ali is under the spotlight, what is constantly coming out of the Ali camp, including Muhammad Ali himself, is I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm going to be the people's champion the same way that Joe Louis was the people's champion, but I'm going to do it in my way. And in that respect, Muhammad Ali embraced the ideals of not only black radicalism, but some of the more radical elements of American life. And we'll pick it up there in the next segment.